Hello, hello, hello. I'm back. I'm back. Welcome, welcome, welcome. So I know it's been a minute since I've been on here, been real busy doing some other things, but didn't want to leave you all out. I know I haven't forgotten about you all, so hope you didn't think that. But we left off back in, I believe it was April when I last did the book. We were going over 30 ways in 30 days to do have a better life. So what I'm going to share with you all today is the last tidbits that I want to share with y'all from this book before we move on to another two books that I have that I've read from this year that I want to share with you all to inspire you, empower you, or even challenge you, and just personally growing professionally, spiritually, financially, emotionally. So where we left off from this, I'm going to just cover some more chapters that I did want to go over. Um, that was in this book because it was a phenomenal book, by the way. One of my mentors did this book named Steve Milia, who's actually going to be here in town in the Atlanta, Georgia market tomorrow. So he will be actually speaking on some other things business wise that he does, as well as his probably promoting his book and sharing it with other people of some of the things that has given him the success he's had as an entrepreneur. So one of the things in his book from day 16 that I want to touch on and pick up from where we left off is called Good or Bad, Hard to Say. And so a lot of times when we think about something good that happens to us or maybe bad, how we quantify it in our minds, it may turn out to be quite opposite, depending on what it is. So that's what that chapter talks on or touches on. So I'm just going to go to that chapter right quick and give you some nuggets from that, which were really amazing to me, because you'll get into finding out more in this day 16 of his book why he's talking about good or bad, hard to say, when he wants to categorize things that happen to us, that we look at, whether it's in a good light or a bad light of what's happening to us. So one of the things that he touches on in this chapter is pretty much an old Chinese proverb, the good or bad, I cannot say, saying. And so it says, once there was a Chinese farmer who worked his poor farm together with his son and their horse. When the horse ran off one day, neighbors came to say, how unfortunate for you. The farmer replied, good or bad, hard to say. When the horse returned, followed by a herd of 20 wild horses, the neighbors gathered around and exclaimed, well, good luck for you. The farmer stayed calm and replied, good or bad, hard to say. So you'll get, as I get more towards the end, why he's saying this. While trying to obtain one of the wild horses, the farmer's son was violently thrown off and broke his leg. He had to rest up and couldn't help with the farm chores. How sad for you, the neighbors cried. Good or bad, hard to say. Shortly after that, a neighboring army threatened the farmer's village. All the young men in the village were drafted to fight the invaders. Many died, but the farmer's son had been left out of the fighting because of his broken leg. People said to the farmer, what a good thing your son couldn't fight. Good or bad, hard to say, was all the farmer said. So the moral of the story is no event in and of itself can truly be judged as good or bad, lucky or unlucky, fortunate or unfortunate, but only time will tell the whole story. So as we think of our purpose and just living day by day, one day at a time, just living life, you really don't know if things that come are really good or really bad. But it's all in how you look at it. At the end of the day, we know ultimately God has the final say in how things play out and why they happened, or when they happen. And it could usually mean some things that are considered to be bad in your eyes could be really for your good. And then some things that you may think that are good for yourself or for others may be actually playing out to show you a lesson in itself of why it may have turned out bad or how you're viewing it. So everything happens for a reason, and we have to keep that in mind. And that's why I wanted to share that chapter with you, because a lot of times we get so caught up in things, when it's more so not the good but the bad of things, and not really seeing the silver lining in it. And that's why I want to make sure I continue to encourage my followers and viewers that you don't want to really misjudge things when it's something bad, because you never know how it could turn around and, of course, be something that really was bad at that time, but then in the end, it actually turned out to be good because of a bigger picture, so to speak. So the next day that he touches on that I thought was really good is day 19. And in that day, it's just talking about how success is a numbers game. And a lot of us, we all look for success and want to have it, whether it's slow or fast, that it happens. We all want to be successful in whatever endeavors that we're accomplishing when it comes to, your job, career, business, relationships, just anything you can think of in life. You really want to always have the mindset of I want to come out on top and be a success or I've achieved something. So one of the things he touches on in day 19, why is he saying success is a numbers game? He talks about a book by Malcolm Gladwell where it's talking about the outliers. And so he does an entire chapter on the principle of 10,000 hours. And most people know about that principle, but if you don't, most of the speakers or authors talk about it of, to become an expert in anything or master your craft, so to speak, you would, want to be able to roughly put in 10,000 hours. So Gladwell talks or teaches on that principle, and he touches on it in this day 19 chapter. And then he says, they lose themselves for hours because they love what they do. So if you do the math and give yourself some time, 40 hours per week multiplied by 50 weeks comes out to annually 2,000 hours. So within about 5 years, you probably would have mastered that craft or whatever it is that you're putting work into and what you're passionate about and what you're studying and focusing on so much on an annual basis, if you're looking at it that way. So when you look at the 80-20 rule is what he also brings up. A lot of time when we think of activities that we're doing, it says that there's a lot of different ways to look at this principle or rule, but 80% of our results come from 20% of our efforts, to be honest. So if you're leading a team or you have, it's pretty much your top 20% of the team that you have is what's bringing out that 80% result that you see. So to pinpoint says what activities 20% bring you in the most money or results, and do that as much as you can, meaning 80% of the time. And a lot of other authors and speakers touch on this 80-20 rule, not just one person. So it's different ways to look at it. But when he goes into, how to know your numbers, it's pretty much pinpointing on how your ratios play out with whatever, business you're doing or whatever you're following as a passion of yours. He's saying, when you do something often enough, ratios begin to appear. So if you're in sales, for many people who are entrepreneurs or live life, you're in sales, believe it or not. It says how many people on average must you speak with to get an appointment. So this is for people who are in the sales industry that have to get appointments to sell things. And so you go based off of how many appointments do you average before you get a yes. So again, like he touches with this chapter, that's why he says success is a numbers game. If you think about it, not everybody's going to buy what you're serving or selling or producing or showing, but someone will buy. But knowing the numbers game will help you know how frequently you will have to put in that work to be able to get what it is or goals you're trying to achieve when it comes to numbers. And lastly, he touches on this chapter of saying take inventory. It says it's hard to reach a goal if you don't know where your starting point is. Whether you own a retail store or run a sales team, it's important to inspect. So inspect, IN, what you expect, EX. So it's important that you do inspect what you expect. So what this means is every business or project should have numbers you want to constantly monitor so you know whether you're winning or losing, whether you're on track or off track, however you want to phrase it and however you want to look at that. So he says, think about, the Las Vegas casino. They are constantly adding up whether a specific table is up or down. Some numbers cannot wait until the end of the day to take a look at. It could be too late. So at the end of the day, you always want to know your most important numbers and keep an eye on them when you're looking at how to pan things out when it comes to having that success that you want to have and dealing with the numbers game. Lastly, I want to touch on this last chapter. Some other chapters after this one, but for day 21, I really applaud it because it's talking about don't quit. And when we think about, a lot of times we're starting off with something with high enthusiasm and then we dwindle off after, we get so many no's or get knocked down or just, simply us not getting really what we think we deserve at that particular moment. but staying in it to battle out, what it is that you are fighting for and what you feel is worth pursuing and achieving, no matter how long it takes you. So, one of the poems in this chapter is called Don't Quit. And then it's just talking about the difference in knowing when to quit and when not to quit. So I want to break those two things down because a lot of people may not understand the difference. And I see we have a viewer on here, so I apologize. I'm just now seeing the chat. So I've been over here running my mouth trying to get all this information to you all before we close out this book. But hello, Joel. Nice to have you. Thank you for following and watching. Make sure you check out the rest of it, everyone. If you can't look at this all in one setting. So the Don't Quit poem says, um, it's somewhere you could probably have it taped, but it says when things go wrong, and sometimes they will. When the road you're trudging seems all uphill, when the funds are low and the debts are high, and you want to smile, but you have to sigh. When care is pressing you down a bit, rest if you must, but don't you quit. Life is queer with its twists and turns, as every one of us sometimes learns. And many a fellow turns about when he might have won had he stuck it out. Don't give up, though the pace seems slow. You may succeed with another blow. Often the goal is nearer than it seems to a faint and faltering man. Often a struggler has given up when he might have captured the victor's cup. And he learned too late when the night came down how close he was to the golden crown. Success is failure turned inside out, the silver tint in the clouds of doubt, and you never can tell how close you are. It might be near when it seems afar. So stick to the fight when you're hit the hardest. It's when things seem worse that you must not quit. And so this poem is talking about don't quit. But it's also in this chapter it teaches and I mean I know this poem can be taped up somewhere. I know I need to have it up. Because this, we all have our moments where we want to quit or give up, so to speak, or throw in the towel because it just seems too hard. Or we going through too much pain, or we don't see the end of the tunnel. We think it's gonna last forever. But persistence is self-discipline in action. So your willingness to persist when things go wrong or when you encounter obstacles is a sign of your character, and self-confidence goes up every time you persist. So the last part of this section says, or maybe you should quit. So knowing the difference is really sometimes, can be difficult for a person, but this is how you know when you either should keep going or you should quit. So it says, this is another poem by Kenny Rogers, the gambler. Says you got to know when to hold them, know when to fold them, know when to walk away, and know when to run. So it says you also have to be able to identify times when you should quit. So if a business project or person is no longer serving your greater vision, you must have the intuition and courage to pick up your stakes and move on. I'm going to repeat that. If a business project or person is no longer serving your greater vision, you must have the intuition and courage to pick up your stakes and move on. So that's how you know when it's time to quit, in that sense. So some of the best decisions have been when the author says when he knew it was time to walk away. Others have been when he stuck it out. So it goes both ways, but you have to know the difference and be able to discern that. But if you're focused, you'll know when it is best to quit on something. And so it says we all have bad, destructive, and even dangerous habits we know aren't serving us. Put it this way: if whatever you're doing has groups of people who meet on a regular basis with the word anonymous after it, it's probably slowing you down. None of us want to believe we have challenges or addictions, but we do. The sooner you cut these things out of your life, the better. So that's another way to look at what you should be quitting, meaning say no to and no longer do it. And when you do quit those things, you always want to replace that old habit with a new habit that's going to allow your brain not to go back to knowing that you're quitting, but tricking it into knowing that you're not giving up, but you're simply replacing that old habit. So the last part of this chapter says always, well, I already said that, replace it with a bad habit with a new habit. But one of the other things it says, whatever it is he's made you think of as you read these last few paragraphs, you may want to consider quitting when it comes to bad habits or old habits that you know is no longer serving that greater vision that God has for you. So at the end of the day, that was the last chapter that I wanted to highlight out of this book. Again, it's called 30 Ways in 30 Days to a Better Life. You can get it on, I believe, Amazon, as well as this gentleman's website, Steve Milia. So make sure you take a look at his book if you are trying to make some changes within 30 days and continue those changes and habits for the rest of the year as well as life, because these are some great habits that he has you develop in this book that he touches on in different days when you're going through his 30 days book. So with that being said, I'm glad you all were able to tune in today. If you know anyone that this can help, definitely share it with them. Share my video. But the next two books that we're going to be touching on one by one is called, this is for women. I haven't read the men's book, unfortunately, so I'm sorry, man. I'm leaving you out on this one. But this next one is called The Resolution for Women, and that's by a great author named Priscilla Shirer. So make sure you are taking a look at this next video series, because that's what I'll be covering is The Resolution for Women, which is an awesome book, more on the spiritual side of things for women. And then the next book after that will be The Power of Broke by Mr. Damon John, Mr. Fubu himself, Shark Tank, as we know him. He talks about the power of broke and how you can use that to your advantage through different entrepreneurs that he's featured in his book and telling their stories. So I want to definitely share that next with you all. So with that being said, God bless and see you all over the top.